Every morning at exactly 7:15, the bell above the door of Miller's Diner chimed softly as the same man walked in, settling quietly into the corner booth by the window, ordering the same simple breakfast, black coffee and 2 eggs, over easy, wheat toast on the side. He always paid in cash, and he always left exactly $10 on the table, regardless of how small the bill happened to be, folding the bills neatly beneath the edge of his coffee cup before leaving each morning without much conversation beyond a polite thank you. Vivian Hale had waited his table for nearly 4 months now, ever since he'd first started coming in, quiet, unassuming, dressed simply despite what she'd eventually learned, through a passing comment from another customer, was considerable wealth. Daniel Reyes, founder of Reyes Holdings, one of the largest logistics companies in the region, sat quietly each morning in a modest diner booth, tipping consistently, generously, though never explaining why. At first, Vivian assumed it was simply generosity, the kind wealthy people sometimes displayed without much thought behind it. But as the months passed, she noticed something more deliberate in his routine, the exact same amount, the exact same quiet, careful placement of the bills, regardless of the day's total. One rainy Tuesday morning, curiosity finally outweighed her professional restraint. "Can I ask you something?" she said, refilling his coffee carefully. "You've been coming in every morning for months now, always leaving exactly $10, no matter what you order. I don't mean to pry, but I've always wondered why." Daniel glanced up, considering the question thoughtfully before answering. "It's a bit of a personal habit," he admitted. "Do you really want to know?" "I do," Vivian said honestly. "It's not often someone's this consistent about anything." Daniel considered this for a moment, then gestured toward the empty seat across from him. "Do you have a minute? It's a bit of a story." Vivian glanced toward the counter, confirming her other tables were momentarily settled, then slid quietly into the seat across from him. 10 years ago, Daniel began, I was struggling. Newly out of the military, trying to figure out civilian life, barely making ends meet while attempting to start a small logistics company from almost nothing. I used to come into a diner very similar to this one, back in my hometown, most mornings, ordering the cheapest thing on the menu because it was often the only meal I could afford that day. Vivian listened quietly, genuinely surprised by the vulnerability in his admission. There was a waitress there, Daniel continued, an older woman named Ruth, who noticed pretty quickly that I was struggling, though I never said anything directly. She started quietly adding an extra egg to my plate some mornings, refilling my coffee without charging extra, small things that probably felt insignificant to her, but meant everything to me during that difficult stretch. That's incredibly kind, Vivian said softly. It was, Daniel agreed. One morning, I finally saved up enough to leave her a decent tip, more than I could really afford at the time. She refused it at first, insisted she was just doing her job. I told her I wasn't leaving until she accepted it. He paused, a faint, nostalgic smile crossing his face. She finally did, and I promised myself that once I had enough, I'd never let another server go unnoticed for their kindness, regardless of how small it seemed. So the $10, Vivian said slowly, it's not really about the tip itself. No, Daniel said honestly. It's about remembering that kindness, especially quiet, consistent kindness, matters more than people realize. Ruth probably never knew how much those small gestures meant to me during that time. I don't ever want anyone serving me to wonder the same thing. Vivian sat quietly for a moment, genuinely moved by his explanation. Whatever happened to Ruth? She'd passed away a few years after I started the company, Daniel admitted, his voice softening further. I went back to visit her before she passed, thanked her properly, made sure she knew exactly how much those small kindnesses had meant. I like to think the $10 every morning since then is a small way of honoring that, paying forward what she gave me, even if it's just symbolic most days. That's beautiful, Vivian said sincerely. Truly. Daniel studied her for a moment. I don't tell many people that story, he admitted. But you asked honestly, so I figured you deserved an honest answer. I appreciate that, Vivian said. More than you probably realize. As their conversation naturally wound down, Vivian returned to her other tables, though something about the exchange lingered comfortably between them over the following weeks. Their morning conversations gradually became a small, welcome part of both their routines, brief but genuine exchanges exchanged alongside coffee refills and quiet breakfast orders. One morning, several weeks later, Vivian arrived to find Daniel already seated, an envelope resting quietly beside his usual folded $10. "What's this?" she asked, curious. "Open it," Daniel said simply. Inside, she found information regarding a small scholarship fund Daniel had just established, aimed specifically at supporting service industry workers pursuing further education, named quietly in Ruth's honor. "I wanted you to be the first person to know," Daniel said. "Given our conversations, it felt right." Vivian felt her eyes well up slightly, genuinely moved by the unexpected gesture. "Daniel, this is incredibly generous." "It's overdue," Daniel said simply. "Ruth deserved recognition long before now. I'm just glad I finally found the right way to give it to her, even after everything." As the morning light spilled gently through the diner's windows, casting warm reflections across the worn countertops, Vivian found herself reflecting quietly on how something as simple as a $10 tip had unexpectedly revealed such a profound, deeply personal story, proof that sometimes the smallest, most consistent gestures carried the heaviest, most meaningful history behind them. "Thank you," she said softly, "for trusting me with that." Daniel smiled, genuine warmth settling comfortably across his expression. "Thank you for asking," he said. "Most people never do."